friends, subscribe this channel and hit the bell icon. Thank you very much.
Hello all my dear students, Hseb Suraj once again in front of you to have. Today I'm going to tell you about a short story from class 12 major English, which is the use of force. This story is from the first unit of the book Encounter. This story is written by William Carlos Williams, an American poet, novelist and story writer. The main narrator here in this story is a doctor who has shared his own experience related with the treatment of a sick child. This story, the use of force, centers around the conflict between the doctor and a sick child who has been suffering from severe throat pain for 3 days. This story has presented the excessive use of physical force by the doctor to comfort a sick child. This story has raised a serious question for all of us, that is it good for the doctors to make use of force for the treatment of their patients? Here in this story, we find good intention of the doctor for the betterment of a sick child. But the sick child treats the doctor in a very distrustful way. Here, the doctor has made many attempts to examine the throat of sick child. Finally, being so angry, the doctor has used his excessive physical force to examine sick child's throat. Here we even find the protest of the girl through her attacking ex. The girl attacks the doctor, crying a lot at last. Here in this story, we find both psychological as well as physical conflict between both the doctor and the sick child. Psychologically, both of them are seen quite stubborn to defeat each other. The psychological aggression is seen within them. They seem psychologically forceful. At last, we find physical conflict between both of them. The doctor has used his excessive physical force to examine the sick child's throat, whereas the sick child has also shown her physical force through her attacking acts. Now, I would like to tell you about this story's main summary. Once the main narrator, who was doctor by his profession, had to go to Olson's house to examine a child. Mr. and Mrs. Olson had one and only daughters whose name was Matilda. When doctor arrived at Olson's house, Mrs. Olson welcomed him. The doctor moved inside the kitchen where the sick child was sitting on her father's lap. The Olson's family members looked at the doctor quite distrustfully. After seeing the doctor, the girl seemed somewhat changed. She became quite nervous. Her eyes remained wide. She started breathing quite rapidly. The doctor knew that the sick child had fever. He had found many similar cases of fever and diphtheria at her school. The doctor asked about throat pain of sick child, but Olson family denied, saying that she didn't have. The doctor asked sick child to open her mouth. He called her by her name in a very familiar way, but the sick child did not move and obey his orders. At the meantime, Mrs. Olson assured her daughter, saying that doctor wouldn't hurt her. The doctor did not like this assurance of Mrs. Olson. When the doctor moved ahead to examine her, the sick child closed the doctor's eyes. The doctor's eyeglass dropped down on the kitchen floor. Both Mr. and Mrs. Olson asked for apology to doctor. Later on, Mrs. Olson started shaking her daughter by her arm. The doctor found both Mr. and Mrs. Olson very careless. He told both of them that he had to examine child's throat at any cost. He wanted the child to obey his orders, otherwise, he would have to open her mouth in his own way. After hearing doctor's words, the sick child became much more fearful. Her nervousness increased so high. The doctor asked Mr. Olson to hold her daughter tightly. He did not want any interference from parents. He wanted cooperation from the parents. Mr. Olson held her daughter so tightly. After that, the fighting began. When the doctor moved ahead to examine her, the sick child started screaming, saying that they were about killing her. The doctor held head of the child by his left hand and inserted a medical instrument between her teeth. But the doctor's attempts failed again because the sick child broke that medical instrument. There was bleeding from her mouth. The doctor asked for another spoon-type instrument to open her mouth. The girl shrieked in an emotional way. The doctor became too much angry. To examine her, providing her comfort, is a social duty for him. Finally, the doctor used his excessive physical force to open her mouth and became successful. He found out main reason behind sick child's fever. The sick child had been suffering from severe throat pain for 3 days. She had kept her pain secret. But the sick child started attacking the doctor, being much more angrier. Earlier she was playing defensive role, but eventually she tried to get up from her father's leg to attack the doctor. Her eyes were full of tears. So this is all in all about this short story, which is The Use of Force by William Carlos Williams. Now, I would like to present you some important questions and their answers, which will help you in your examination. Thank you for watching this video. We'll meet again in my next video. Until then, bye bye, take care, and don't forget to subscribe and like my videos. Thank you.